Hey Tim, now that I can drive, I should probably get a car, I announced one morning at breakfast. Sure, and I can probably help find you one at auction, answered Tim casually. Thanks, but I want to check with my Hare Krishna friend Eugene Garage first, I answered. I remembered that Eugene had once told me that he sold cars, and I was thinking that it would be nice to see him for a catch-up, and to maybe buy a car from him to help support his lifestyle, especially as he'd always been such a good friend to me. I jumped off the bus at Culver City and strolled towards the Hare Krishna temple. Hey Eugene, I called out upon spotting Eugene chatting to a fellow devotee. Eugene turned and gave me a surprised smile. His devotee friend took off and Eugene waved goodbye to him and strolled over towards me. How are you doing, Eugene? I asked with a big smile as we got near to each other. I'm doing fine, thank you, but more importantly, how are you doing? He asked, looking a little concerned. I'm doing great, thanks. I've just got another little au pair gig up near Hollywood, I answered with a big smile. So, I was wondering, do you have any cars going for sale at the moment? Because I'm looking to buy one, I announced proudly. Can you drive? Asked Eugene, looking confused. Oh no, but I thought it would be fun to get a car anyway, I answered sarcastically with a laugh. What do you mean? Asked Eugene, looking even more confused. I'm joking. Tim taught me to drive and I passed my driving test, so now I'm after a car, I answered with a grin. Oh, I see. Well, yes, I do have a couple of cars for sale, if you want to stroll over and take a look, answered Eugene as he cracked a smile and looked a tiny bit pleased for me. Yeah, that'd be great, thanks, I answered. We strolled down the side street past the temple and back to Venice Boulevard and crossed over. Eugene led the way to a small yard and opened the gate. Inside were a handful of cars parked all around. Oh, I like that one, I exclaimed, spotting a large, cool-looking American-style car. Sure, take a look inside, said Eugene as we got nearer. Thanks, I answered as I opened the driver's door and peeped inside. Yeah, I really like it. And is the engine and whatnot in good condition, I asked, figuring that a good-looking car with a rubbish engine would be pretty useless. Yes, it's all good, and if you have any problems, you can bring it back to me, Eugene answered reassuringly. Great, so how much do you want for it? I asked excitedly. Well, normally $300, but $200 for you, answered Eugene with a slight smile. That's great, I answered, knowing it would be well within my budget. Okay, so we should take it for a test drive first. I can drive you up to Hollywood so you can see how it runs, and afterwards you can take it for a drive around your neighborhood. How does that sound? Asked Eugene. Sounds great to me, I answered, feeling excited to be on the verge of buying my very first car. Okay, let's go, exclaimed Eugene as he jumped into the driver's seat and I jumped into the passenger seat. We drove out of the yard and onto Venice Boulevard and headed east. I loved how the car just seemed to glide along, and I couldn't believe that it was to be mine by the end of the day. I like how smooth it runs, I exclaimed to Eugene as we cruised along with our windows down. Yeah, it's a good car, answered Eugene matter-of-factly. As we drove up La Brea towards Hollywood Boulevard, I could suddenly hear police sirens. Someone's in trouble, I thought to myself, thinking it must be pretty serious as I could hear a lot of sirens. As we neared Hollywood Boulevard, we were suddenly surrounded by about 5 police cars, and loads of policemen quickly jumped out of their cars and pointed their guns right at us. A helicopter hovered directly overhead as I realized that it was us that the sirens had been for. Oh my God, I wonder what he did, I thought to myself while assuming that Eugene must have done something terribly wrong. Get out of the car with your hands up, shouted a policeman through a megaphone. How can we open the doors with our hands in the air? I exclaimed frustratedly. I nervously glanced out of my window in search of some kind of help with this dilemma. I suddenly spotted a policeman crouched down in the bushes about 5 feet away from me with a gun pointed directly at my face. "Get out of the car with your hands up!" yelled the policeman with the megaphone again, this time sounding more impatient. Nervously, I slowly went about opening my car door, while hoping that I wouldn't be shot for not keeping my hands in the air. Once my car door was open, I somehow managed to get out of the car and stand up with my hands in the air the whole time, while Eugene did the same thing from his side of the car. "Walk backwards and keep your hands in the air," shouted the policeman with the megaphone. "What's he done?" I shouted back as I started to turn to see who was shouting our instructions. "Shut up unless you want your head blown off," the policeman shouted back at me, so I quickly turned to face the front. I slowly walked backwards in a state of shock and disbelief, with my hands held high in the air. We were surrounded by police cars and at least 10 policemen with guns pointed at us, while the helicopter still whirled overhead and a crowd had started to gather to watch. I could see Eugene walking slowly backwards to my left in the corner of my eye, but I didn't want to turn my head to look at him in case any sudden movement on my part would cause the police to shoot at me. Suddenly, one of the police officers roughly grabbed me, put handcuffs on me, patted me down, shoved me in the police car and drove off at high speed. "What's going on? What did he do?" I exclaimed, feeling shaken and still not believing what was happening. The policeman completely ignored me and drove at full speed over to the nearest sheriff's shelter. They parked up and I was roughly taken out of the police car and inside the building. I had mugshots and fingerprints taken and was thrown into a small holding cell. I spent the whole night in the cell with a woman who seemed to be out of her mind on drugs, as she looked absolutely insane, and she spent most of the night screaming out random things. I stayed awake and sat up for my own safety, while longing for this crazy ordeal to be over. Early the next morning, I caught a glimpse of Eugene being escorted past my cell, and still felt shocked by the thought that he must have done something dreadful. A little while later, a policeman arrived and escorted me from my cell and led me to the sheriff's office, where I was asked to calmly take a seat. The policeman, who I assumed to be the sheriff, cleared his throat and leaned across his desk with a serious expression on his face. "We're very sorry. You and your friend were victims of circumstance," said the sheriff, staring at me intensely. "So he's done nothing wrong?" I asked, wanting to be certain that Eugene hadn't committed a crime. "Not that we're aware of. He was asking the same about you," answered the sheriff with a slight smile. "Yeah, that's fair enough," I answered with a laugh. "So what happened?" I asked, still feeling totally confused. "You and your friend fit the description of a couple of armed robbers who'd robbed a business in the same area you passed through on your way to Hollywood," answered the sheriff, looking a little sheepish. "Oh, I see. Gosh, so they looked like a Hare Krishna guy in robes and a teenage goth rock girl," I asked, feeling the need to point out how bizarre it was. "Well, the car fit the description, and from what the police could make out from the outside, you and your friend fit the description too," answered the sheriff, as if trying to justify the incident somewhat. "Okay, so can I go now?" I asked, feeling relieved that this crazy ordeal was finally coming to an end. "Yes, and once again I'd like to apologize. Are you okay for a lift home, or shall I arrange something for you?" asked the sheriff as he stood up. "Oh no, I'm fine from here, thanks," I answered, just wanting to get out of there. "Okay, I'll lead you to the exit," said the sheriff as he led the way. "So has Eugene gone already?" I asked, wondering where he was. "Yeah, we questioned him this morning," answered the sheriff as he opened the exit door. "Okay, thank you, bye," I replied as I hurried off. "Bye, have a nice day," shouted the sheriff. Just another day in LA, I thought to myself, feeling relieved to be free again.